All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Rise Above Justice Movement, the podcast. My name is Zachary Mallory, and I am the host and the founder of the Rise Above Justice Movement and the Rise Above Justice Movement, the podcast. All right. So, continuing on in our journey of highlighting progressive candidates all across the country, I am joined by two candidates that are running to bring progressive leadership to the state of Texas and the Texas Democratic Party. Um, I am so excited. I think this is a critical moment in history to have progressive candidates running at all levels of government and leadership all across the country. So, without further ado, I would like to bring on Lane and Florisbel. I really hope I didn't butcher that. But I'm so excited to welcome both of you to the podcast. So if I can have you just come off mute and just say who you are, Lane. We can go ahead and start with you. Um, welcome to the podcast first of all, and then secondly, let's dive in and talk about your background, your history, and why it's important for progressive voices, especially in this moment in time, to run
Yeah,
and to make a difference.
right. Thank you. My name is Lane.law. I grew up in Central Texas and obviously I grew up in a very red situation. And I definitely think it's a perfect time for, or maybe the most important time in my lifetime for progressive voices to show up in every corner of the United States. And we live in a rural county. We're both precinct chairs in a rural county that is incredibly red. And so one of our main goals is to connect as many blue dots as we can. And a lot of times when people hear the more middle of the road voices coming out of the Democratic Party, it is less inspiring, if that makes sense. Um, And I think some people, it makes it easier for certain people to stay home on election day. And our whole job is to get people off their couch and get them out to the polls. That's all I got.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's critical. And every single election absolutely matters. And, oftentimes we hear, is my voice really going to make a difference? And the short answer to that is absolutely 100% yes. Because if we don't get people out to vote and you don't turn out the vote, then those voices go silenced. And especially in those rural areas, my partner grew up in southeast rural Kansas. So rural is oftentimes left out of the conversation and is oftentimes hit the hardest. So, Florisbel, what about you? What's your story and why is it important for progressive candidates to run across the country at all levels?
Thank you so much. First, I just want to start off by saying thank you so much for even giving us the opportunity to amplify our voice in your podcast. When I saw that post that you were just wanting to talk to those grassroots candidates, I was like, oh, let me reach out. Let me type this as fast as I can. So thank you so much for that. And
Absolutely.
so my name is Florisbel Jaramillo. You can just call me Flor. I know I always say if it sounds made up, it's because it is. My grandma couldn't decide between Flor and Isabel, so she combined them. But I am running along with Lane. We're running this joint campaign, so he's my campaign buddy. We're running for the State Democratic Executive Committee. Now, the Texas Democratic Party does something really cool that, unsurprisingly, the Republican Party does not do, which is that we have a committee man and a committee woman for the same district. So we're both running for Congressional District 31. Now, I am a first generation Mexican American. I am also a first generation elementary, middle school, high school, And in just 2 weeks, I'm counting down a college graduate. Um, what a lot of people don't realize is when someone comes with those titles, it often also means that we are a first generation voter. So I obviously don't come with a lot of the amazing political titles or the connections or a lot of the knowledge. It's been a really big year for me. I have learned so, so much. And I think I want to take a moment to just kind of point out that we've had this No Kings movement, and a lot of people say, it's not working, it's not doing enough, and I want to put myself kind of as the result of that because if it wasn't for No Kings, I would not be in the political arena. First of all, my first time ever being politically engaged was the first No Kings protest. Then I was at another protest, and then I was talking to the county chair for Burnett County, which is kind of giving him a shout out, Guy Stewart's. He just kind of brought me into the party along with Roseanne, who is our upcoming chair, and they have mentored me so much. I've learned so much, and I got tired of feeling like there was a big group of people that were loud. I don't think they were big enough to be a majority of the United States, but there was a big portion of people who put on their red hats and decided to completely um, betray the values of what it means to be an American. And I decided that if I was going to be mad, I was going to channel that anger into something that was going to be useful, that was going to put our country back into the path of sanity. And so that is why I'm here. I'm a progressive voice, but I'm also a rural voice, um, which a lot of times Texans in rural communities, and I think along the nation, we know what it means to not only have the lack of representation, but sometimes to not even know who our representation is, just in general, because a lot of parties tend to look at those big political hubs, which don't typically tend to be in 80-20 red districts like we have here in Burnett County.
You know, I've heard numerous times on social media, are the new No Kings really working? Is it really working? Is it really working? The Again, the short answer is yes, it is, because like you said, it's bringing people into the political process, which brings me to, my first question. And Lane, this is going to go to you. Both of you will answer these questions, but Lane, let's begin with you. What do you feel is currently working, and what do you feel is not currently working as far as the Texas Democratic Party is concerned?
Overall, I believe we've seen more movement in the Texas Democratic Party, and honestly, within the last year or 18 months than maybe in any chunk of time in my adult lifetime. I'm old enough to remember, Ann Richards is the first governor I remember. But even during Ann Richards' time, like Texas was a pretty conservative place. But yeah, with the chair of the Texas Democratic Party right now, Kendall Scudder, under his leadership, he's a relatively new chair. He has built a system where, like, it used to be that the Texas Democratic Party had a big office in Austin, and that was kind of it. And he decided to downsize that and put smaller offices spread around the state, which Texas is huge. So I think that was an incredibly smart move and a much better model for showing the electorate that the Democratic Party is here and we're vibrant and we're here to represent their voices. Um, what was the rest of the question? I know I'm forgetting something. Sorry, I'm incredibly old, as Floor likes to remind me.
I'll be 30 this year. I graduated in class of 2015. So I'm definitely
I'm
getting up
quite
there.
I'm quite a bit old. Yeah, my kids get tired of me telling this joke, but I'm gonna tell it anyway. Um,
Absolutely.
when I was a kid, I thought being 45 was old. And then I turned 45 and I was like, I was right the entire time. Everything hurts. All the music I love is not cool. I'm old. I'm everything I made fun of my dad for being, I am that. So, yeah.
I love that. The other part to the question was, what do you feel? So that's what's working, right? So
hmm
I think that's incredible. I love whenever states break up the offices and, do like these like micro offices. That's incredible, first of all, because it puts more eyes in different areas, especially a big ass state like Texas. Because you're right, Texas is huge. Um, what do you feel is not currently working and you feel that could obviously be better? That could obviously, put more people first, right? As far as like progressivism goes, what do you feel is not currently working?
Specifically, yeah, I mean, I guess there's two ways I could go with that, right? I could go with like the Democratic Party or specifically progressive voices in Texas, which
Mm.
those are two different answers, right?
Hmm.
Because there's a lot of moderates in the Texas Democratic Party. There's a lot of people that we've had candidates that we thought were going to be the next big great thing, and then they would vote the wrong way on like supporting trans kids in sports or whatever the given thing was, right?
Hmm.
And I think so. To me that's a lot of the missteps are people wanting the progressive vote but not being progressive enough. And I'm not saying they got to go like all the way, but like when you ride the bench on issues we need you in the fight for, we need you to lean into. That ain't cool, man.
Hmm.
You're making you're making it very easy for people to stay home. And you're not just even, yeah, I keep talking about election day, but not just that. Like we have in the state of Texas right now, we keep talking about it loud and proud, and it is really cool. For the first time since 1972, we have a Democrat in every race at the state level, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
But we want a Democrat in every race on the ballot in every part of Texas, right? That's the game. That's the goal. That's the next one. We got them statewide. Now we need to go deep. And makes it that much harder to recruit good candidates when the uh some of the more visible guys are they chicken out on certain issues. That's it. Right now in this election cycle, we are seeing people try to repair that after the previous election cycle. And
Hmm.
it feels like we're moving not very like we're hard charging in the right direction is what it feels like to me right now.
Absolutely. Floor, what about you? How do you see what's working and what isn't working? How do you feel about
Yeah, so I'm gonna start kind of by making fun of Lane first. I didn't want to interrupt previously, but I'm
that?
gonna tell a quick story. So when we first started, we were one of the first people that were recruited into the precinct. So when we both started, we had a lot of abandoned precincts. The precinct that I'm currently chair of was just abandoned, period. So I remember our first event, our chair, again, Guy, he's our guy, but his name is Guy. Um, he he introduced us and said that we were the youngest ones in the party at that time. And obviously that has grown significantly since then. We're literally so close to having all of our precincts full and have a chair in them, but I asked Lane, I was like, Lane, how old are you? And he told me he was 44, and I was like, oh, you know what? My dad's that age.
Yes, she
So
did.
I'm 25. That's kind of how that's gonna go. So when he says I make fun of him, he's not lying. I for sure do. But
And that's all
kind of
right. Sometimes I remember.
and so kind of going back to your question, I think a lot of the energy that the current leadership in the Democratic Party that they have brought in just this past year, and mind you, they're going through their own learning process, right? This was a Democratic Party that was almost abandoned by the chair completely. You had people working, staff working for the Democratic Party, that background role, just trying to keep this party afloat. And then we had Scudder come in with an insane amount of energy, with so many ideas for organizing. And like Lane said, we got to recruit candidates in every um, level in the state. We had and I think that was one of those big victories that we all kind of got to celebrate when we saw that headline, that we had candidates in every race, and we had one of the most competitive, and honestly, even with all the controversy behind it, I thought one of the best Senate races with both Jasmine Crockett and James Tallarico on the ballot. It was amazing to see so many people energized, and I just hope that energy continues until midterms. Um, what I think hasn't worked in the past is, mind you, I'm a young voter, right? Like I said, I'm 25. I've been voting for um 7 years, I guess this year, 7 years now. So I'm not one that has a lot of history when it comes to voting, but when I entered and I began to vote, um, one, I wasn't taught that I was supposed to vote. So I had to learn a lot of what it meant to be registered, what it meant to research candidates, all of that on my own. And even then, even being somebody who voted, who kind of went into this rabbit hole of research and took my little sticky note to the ballot and voted, there was a lot of, I would say, lack of organization. It almost felt like the party was leaving candidates to kind of fend for themselves, try and bring in this like energy to their own campaign. And it was like a every man for themselves kind of situation. And unfortunately, like Lane pointed out, a lot of the times that meant that we thought we were voting for someone who was a progressive Democrat, and then they turned out not to be because we were kind of left to whatever they were telling us. Um, I think right now that is one of the biggest things that has helped the Democratic Party, that has helped bring trust back into the Texas Democratic Party, is the organization, is the fact that our leadership can say, they've proudly taken the Democratic Party out of debt. And now they're starting these coordinated campaigns for the first time in decades. And I mean decades longer than I've been alive that we've had any kind of campaign like this. Um, so definitely, and kind of piggybacking off of what Lane was saying, we had a lot of people who wouldn't vote. I mean, myself, I have to still argue with my siblings and tell them they have to vote. They can't wait till the last minute because then you never know when you have situations like what happened in Williamson and in Dallas, that you never know if your vote's going to count if you go on election day. But if you don't vote, you just give a free pass to the bad guys to continue winning. And that's not what we want. We want people voting, we want people looking up candidates, we want people asking the hard questions to those candidates. And if they don't give you the answer that you want to hear, then go to the next one. And that is why we should have those competitive races all the time, because we need to have candidates that we can actually trust are going to be a strong progressive voice. One of the biggest things that I've learned is that, and it sounds really, really surprising to say because when I read it, I was really surprised, is that Texas has one of the most progressive Democratic platforms in the nation. And you think about it and you say, what? Texas is a bunch of conservative cowboys. Um, but the reality is that when you take a look at how much time we have been taken advantage of in Texas by the Republicans, by the horrible governor that we unfortunately all have to deal with, you start to think, yeah, they've been suppressed for so long. They would obviously have all these bold ideas on what can bring such big change to Texas that is needed.
You said a key thing, and it's change is needed because it absolutely is. And, thank you for that. I greatly appreciate that. Now, thinking about priorities and thinking about, meeting the current moment, Flora, we'll start with you. I know you just finished talking, but this first one's going to go to you because you brought it up. The priorities and, the progressive agenda. What is on the Texas Democratic platform that, obviously you support, and how can we expand beyond that and add even more like progressive voices and encourage others to also run for office too? Because obviously candidate recruitment is a part of any platform. So let's kind of dive into that for a second. What are the current priorities and what do you want to see expanded?
Absolutely. So I think we have currently a party that is being extremely loud and proud about advocating for the LGBTQ plus community, that is advocating to close down a lot of these inhumane detention centers, that is advocating for our water and land when it comes to those AI data centers. Um, I think one of the biggest ones that was to me really, really surprising, but I truly, truly love that this is something that, and I don't think a lot of people know, is that people in Texas can submit propositions and can submit ideas to the Democratic Party. And eventually, these ideas are voted on by the SDEC, which is what we're running for, to become party priorities. For example, and Lane likes to make fun that our county convention was spent reading all of the propositions that I brought. But I submitted propositions on, which is one of the biggest and most important things. And I've actually joined a virtual town hall for Tallarico and I brought it to him and he was all open to working on it. But it's establishing grants for communities in Texas or and across Texas to establish public transportation. My dream is to have te a Texas that is connected through free and good public transportation. I submitted a resolution on healthcare and establishing grant programs to um, recruit healthcare workers in every level so that we can take care of a lot of these healthcare deserts across the state. I submitted a resolution on vertical vegetation so that we can kind of do this vertical vegetation on all these high traffic areas, think kind of like vines and those bridge columns in Dallas and Fort Worth, those big high trafficked areas, so that it helps with pollution. Um, I mean, there's so many things that could be done by the Democratic Party just to show that we are looking at every issue, that we have an opinion on a lot of these issues that are important to everyday Texans. Especially right now, I think the party is doing an amazing job. Candidates across the state are doing an amazing job at just pointing out how insanely unaffordable everything is. I mean, as we're doing this interview, I'm sitting in my single wide with my AC turned off and it's raining and it's chilly, but I would rather do that and deal with that than pay a high electric bill. And I think that is something that a lot of people need to know, that the more that they get involved at the lowest parts of the party and then move up, the more they're going to have an opportunity to directly bring their concerns to the party.
Mhm. Whenever I think of progressive voices running in the state of Texas, I think about the campaign of Maureen. She's currently running for Congress. And I think of that, and, I'm getting ready to interview her later next month. And this campaign deeply inspired me. It's voices like this and voices like yours, Floor and Lane, I think this is where progress continues to move forward, right? Lane, what about you? As far as priorities within the Texas Democratic Party, what do you see that you would like to see more of, and what do you see that needs to be expanded?
Um, we need to go hard and heavy into, I guess, what's the best thing to call it? Voter access, like the fighting against voter suppression. Voter suppression is incredibly real in the state of Texas. I know we're not the only ones, but Floor and I both worked as alternate judges in the primary, and the extremes to which, let's see, the extremes to which the Republicans didn't have to go to suppress votes was amazing to me. Like it was so easy for them. And one of the ways that I see right now, and this one might get me in a little bit of trouble. I don't know. I don't care. You're probably aware of the phrase or the term weaponized incompetence, right? That's usually used to for like a spouse to make one spouse says, I'm not good at cooking or I'm not good at laundry just because they don't want to cook or do laundry. It's like a very jokey term, but it is in the Texas GOP leans into the weaponized because like our Secretary of State, they seem to really enjoy being bad at their job as far as they make it very easy to hire, make it incentive. They incentivize hiring local elections officials that are very green. They understaff local elections offices. They understaff at the state level. Like we are, like the elections information we got back from Secretary of State after the primary, we still don't have all of it back, and what we do have is uh, super incomplete with even within individual races and stuff, simply because they're not delivering on the level that they're supposed to, right? Um, and so like the Democratic Party, we need to, and I think we are. I hope we are. I'm not obviously I'm not at that level, so I'm not inside that. But that's something I think local Democrats need to be very vocal about, and we need to be talking about more to get the election infrastructure in place that we need. Other than that, it's obviously Floor hit on a lot of the big ones, but school vouchers is huge.
Mhm.
We passed an insane school. So I don't know how many people know the history of that either. Again, this is a benefit of me being old. Um, I've so they've put up the school voucher thing for my entire adult life. It'll raise its head every now and then, and
Mhm.
then they'll have enough people on both sides of the aisle that don't want it that they'll put it to a public vote where it always dies, you know. And this time they didn't do that. This time they had enough money in the right places. They had enough loud psychopaths in the right places that they did everything they could to keep it within Texas state government, in the Senate and in the House. And I took my daughter up there on the night that they voted for it, and I saw, people like James Talarico, people like John Busey, um, and that were like just tooth and nail trying to fight against and like trying to come up with any way they could to amend it or table it or whatever, and just the Republicans were just they knew the way they were going to end the night, and it didn't matter what any public comment had to say about it, right? But and then now I'm starting to hear people kind of back off on it, and that scares me because like at the end of the day, the state of Texas has ballpark $6,200 per kid per year across. That's our budget, and the voucher system takes $10,000 per kid. How
Mhm.
does that math make sense?
Mhm.
It's the most clear example of rich people stealing from poor people that you can possibly imagine.
Exactly. And it also doesn't put students first, and
No.
it caters to the top 1%, like you said. And I'm really glad you brought that up, especially in like rural areas too. It hits really, really hard. So thank you for that. Flora, did you have something to add to that?
Yeah, so kind of piggybacking off of what Lane was saying, we saw this just horrendous push for this voucher scam, um, that unfortunately, they got their way on that. And I think a lot of people just nationwide need to pay attention to Texas one more time. Because in addition to the voucher scam, now our social studies curriculum is being attacked. And teachers across Texas are doing their absolute best to bring attention to this matter. But I don't think their voices are being amplified as much as they should. It is literally a curriculum that's going to have second graders trying to comprehend centuries of history that not even a senior in high school, would be able to comprehend. There's so much that's supposed to be taught as historically accurate information that is um Bible, and I always like to say that I'm a recovering cradle Catholic, right? So I'm not going to say that, I'm not religious, but the reality is, and I think there was an amazing, and I can't think of her name off the top of my head right now, but there's an amazing person that talked at the school board of education uh hearing that they had, and she said, we're not, your religion is not special, and you're not special for believing in it. And as a Catholic, I agree with that. And the fact that first we had our kids' public school dollars stolen, and now we're going to have our kids' history stolen from them, accurate history stolen from them, it's just infuriating.
Absolutely. And I exactly 100%. I think the vouchers are an absolute scam. And like Lane was saying, it caters to that top 1%, and this is something that needs to be highlighted a lot more. So let's talk about, grassroots versus like corporate influence, right? So whenever we think about this, what does grassroots look like in Texas? But also, what does grassroots look like in politics as a whole? Lane, let's begin with you. So whenever we think about grassroots, what does that mean to you?
All right, I got kind of like it sounds like a canned answer because it's something I've been using lately, but it is accurate. I believe it's accurate. It is something I've experienced since becoming so active with the Democratic Party. I'm so in the 80s, some of us remember trickle down economics. We also know living here in the future that it was a lie and it was destined to fail. It's a model that doesn't work.
Mhm.
The Democratic Party is very much based on a trickle up policy that is very successful in kind of a punk rock sort of a way. Like the Democratic Party is the fuel that it thrives on is ideas. Ideas generate community. Ideas, the community thriving on those ideas is how people know that their voice matters. And our leadership when they're doing when our leadership is doing their job, they are feeding on those ideas, they're fighting for those ideas, they are, taking the grassroots ideas and using their experience and education and access to boil those ideas into a platform.
Mhm.
And the other party doesn't seem to work that way. They seem to be straight, they're still trying to be leadership down, and whatever the king says, that's what the subjects are going to run with, right? And we don't work that way. We are about our people, we're about our neighbors, we're about our loved ones, we're about our coworkers, we're about helping each other out. And to me, that is a far more sustainable model. And it's weird that we have to call that progressive, but that's where we're at.
Elaine, so you mean the true definition of, what's that one thing that they always say? Oh, that's right. Love thy neighbor. I had to add that in there. Floor, you mentioned about religion earlier. I had to add that
Yeah,
directly in there.
I think J-Dog's the one that said that, isn't it?
Hmm.
I'm pretty sure.
Hmm.
Yeah,
So,
I don't like actually doing what he said though.
gee, what a concept, right? Uh, and this is what I always say about, practicing what you preach. Everybody says, oh, we need to love our neighbors. And yeah, that also means your queer neighbor. That also means your trans neighbor. That also means your immigrant neighbor. That also means your disabled neighbor. Because sometimes they might need a little bit of assistance. And this is where like deep canvassing comes in. And I learned about deep canvassing earlier last week. I just didn't know it was called deep canvassing, but it's where you just really connect with people that surround you and just find out what they're thinking and find out, what they see as a vision. Um, but deep canvassing goes a long ways. But Floor, what does grassroots look like to you? And what does grassroots look like in Texas? Because like you said, a lot of people are not turning out, but there is, people turning out. So it's a double-edged sword here. But thinking about grassroots, what does that mean to you as far as like politics goes?
To me, a grassroots candidate, I think probably the easiest way to summarize it is it doesn't start with power, they
Mhm.
build it with the people.
Mhm.
A good grassroots candidate isn't defined by how many people already know them. It should be defined by how many people they're willing to know, they're willing to listen to, and I think most importantly, they're willing to organize with. And I think what that means is that they show up in every county, not just the biggest ones, especially here in Texas, where we have way more rural counties than we have those big, large counties, like Harris, like Terrence, like Austin. Um, I think it also means that they listen, before they ask for support. They have to build the relationships that, last beyond one election. That they're gonna not only bring in their support, but they're gonna bring in volunteers and leaders instead of relying on those same safe circles. And kind of building onto what Lane said, they're gonna organize from the ground up. They're not just gonna go from the top down. And I don't think grassroots um it isn't a label, right? It's showing up, it's listening, it's building power together, and it's not inherited. I think what's most important and what I've seen in the move here in Texas is that candidates are earning it one conversation at a time. I've gotten to meet just amazing candidates in this short time that I've been in this political arena. I've gotten to meet Javi, who I've had multiple one-on-one conversations with, and I always say that I kind of feel kind of cool that I have a candidate's phone number on my phone. But there's a lot of candidates like him, like Justin Early, like James Tallarico, who is showing up for those small counties, that are wanting to have those one-on-one conversations that weren't being had before because people were relying on, again, those same safe circles to push them through the finish line, and that's not what it should be. We should be gaining people's trusts and keeping people's trust, which is, I think, the most important part of that.
Mhm. You said a key thing is trust. And I also feel a lot of people do not have trust in the political process because they've been burned and they feel that their voice has not been represented and they feel that their voice has been silenced. So thank you for addressing that. Um, it kind of brings me to my next to last question is where do you see Texas being in the next 5 years? And I know that this is kind of like a vision board. What do we see going forward? Obviously, we want to see more, candidates running, but what else is there as far as like the expansion of the platform, but also just bringing more people into the political process? Either one of you can jump in and answer this specifically. um, where do you see Texas going in the next 5 years? I know we got to get through midterms and then get through 2028, but let's be a little optimistic here.
Floor, you should answer this since you'll still be alive in 5 years.
I keep saying, Lane, you're my dad's age, so don't say that.
Oh my gosh.
Um, I think if in 5 years the Texas Democratic Party cannot position itself as a party that is one representing everyone, that is connecting everyone, and that is organizing everyone, then there's going to be a big shift that's going to have to occur at that point. I think we're in the right path, but I think that if those three things are not being fully met, if we don't get that horrible human being of a governor
Mhm.
out of office, then I mean, I really see a Texas that's going to have an even bigger shift than what we're seeing now. Um, we need to focus on getting those horrible people out of office, one. Um, and then we need to focus on making sure that the people in Texas feels represented, that they understand that the party that is truthfully representing working class people are the ones that, are like them, dealing with mortgages and complaining about their mortgages like Lane complains to me about, who maybe, like myself, I'm renting. I don't even know if I can sell my left kidney to even buy a home in Texas right now. Um, but I think those are the big things that are going to need to happen. And that is what I would like to see of the Texas Democratic Party. Me and Lane are coming into this race with this like huge vision that we've been trying for the past couple of days to just explain, what we want. And that is that we want Congressional District 31 to be so connected that we are spreading information, that we are spreading plans faster than small town rumors spread, and then using that model to connect our bordering districts and eventually connect Texas. And then not only are we flipping Texas, but we're keeping the power enough so that we can see these bold changes and people can begin to finally have the trust that needs to, again, be earned by the Democratic Party.
100%. Absolutely. I think that vision works outside of Texas as well. I think that's just the country as a whole, right? We need to make sure that we fight back against fascism and do it in a way that keeps it fought, right? So thank you for stating that. Now, the last thing is how can people follow you on social media, first of all? And this is for both of you. And then also uplift the work that you were doing and just continue this momentum. What if you could give a word of advice, and I know I'm throwing a lot at you at the last second, but if you could give a word of advice for somebody who might be considering running for office, what would you tell them? Lane, we can start with you.
All right. So let's, I guess, the second last thing first.
Mhm.
I think now is the perfect time to run as a progressive in Texas. It's because not just for your race, but for Texas as a whole. I think we need to show up. It's
Mhm.
very the campaign Floor and I are on, it's very much based on the concept of showing up. That's what we're trying to show up. We need other people to show up. We need, something I always talk about in is at these, meet and greets that we've been going to and stuff is, yeah, so I already talked earlier about us wanting to recruit candidates up and down the ballot. And that's true. And local participation is, having precinct chairs, having precinct captains, having in some of the counties, having a county chair, finding a county chair. Like when people see that, when somebody who might want to run for something sees that, that makes it easier for them to commit, right? Well, it's a two-way street. So if you're a, somebody at our level, like where Floor and I were a year ago or 2 years ago or whatever, before we got super involved, it helps us know that it is worthy of getting involved, seeing those candidates. So like I think it if you're somebody in Texas right now thinking about jumping into a race and you're a progressive voice, you might get into a race and maybe you don't win this race, but you're going to be part of building the next cycle that wins tons of races because just you being on the ballot will help bring people out of their shell. It's, I grew up in a Texas where when I started voting, you saw almost no Democrat, not just in local races, but in a whole lot of high level state races, there were no Democrat options when you got to the voting booth. And that's starting to change big time. And the more it changes, the more voters we're going to find, the less afraid they are going to be to get engaged and to lean into the fight. And it is a fight right now. Also, the, this is maybe this is an interest. I don't know, fun, uh, maybe a little bit of a messy way to put it, but Barack Obama, when he was president, people always said he was the best gun salesman ever because every redneck was afraid that he was going to take their guns away, so they ran to the gun store every time they got a paycheck, right?
Mhm.
Donald Trump is the best Democrat recruiter in history because the world's on fire and he's the guy fanning the flames, and we all see it. And a lot of people, that's getting a lot of people engaged that were not engaged before. And there's a lot of people still that are just not sure or they're scared or whatever. We had a split primary in our county, which means Democrats and Republicans line up separately. And out here in rural Texas, that means the Republican line was super long, right? And a lot of Democrats came into the polling place, and you could tell they were like visibly like unsettled or afraid because they just had to walk along that long line that had like their boss or their employer or their friends from church, and now they're outed as being a Democrat in an area where that's not always a healthy thing to admit you are. And but the more people we see that are Democrats, the more quality people we see running as Democrats, like Clayton Tucker is running for ag commissioner, like Hobby that for mentioned, and like Kendall that's the head of the party in the state, like all these faces that are trustworthy individuals and visible. Visibility is so important. They make it so much easier for people to get involved and that's how you build a blue wave, right? And it's all structured on people. And so we need people at every level to just jump in.
100%. Floor.
So I think one of the, I think best advices that I was given, I don't know if it would really be best for somebody that's coming in, which I didn't see as the best advice, but now that I've been doing this for almost a year, I guess it's the best I got. Just jump in. Just jump in. I don't want to be the only 25-year-old in politics. There is going to always be something to be learned. You
Mhm.
know, this past election cycle here in Texas, even our own mentors were learning because a lot of what happened, a lot of the disenfranchisement, and excuse my French, but a lot of the bullshit that really happened during the election, it was new. It wasn't like we didn't expect it because we always know they're up to something, but a lot of the ways that we had to deal with a lot of these problems that were purposely, caused, um, they were new to a lot of them. And so there's always going to be a learning process. It doesn't matter how long you've been in politics, how long you've been volunteering for your precinct chair, how long you've been just educating yourself before you go uh, into the booth to vote. Um, just jump in, contact your county party. If there's not a party, which unfortunately right now is one of the big hurdles that me and Lane want to focus on, if we do get the vote of the delegates in the convention, in the state convention in June, if there's not a party, look for clubs. There's always clubs. Go to your neighboring county. Find somebody because I promise you, there's so many blue dots. And I'm gonna steal Lane's logo, but just jump in the truck. We got blue dots to connect. By the way, that's a really good logo that I'm really jealous that he came up with. Um,
Thank you.
but there is not a better time to be politically engaged than now. The more you stand on the sideline, the more that you stay quiet, the more you allow the bad guys to win.
100%. All right. And with that, thank you both so much for, first of all, for running for the people, by the people. That is what matters the absolute most. And I say this as a democratic socialist, thank you so much for everything that you are doing and will continue to do. I greatly appreciate both of you, and your voice is so incredibly powerful. Lane, you're never too old to make a difference.
Thank you.
So
Well,
I had to piggyback off a floor on this, but but thank you both so much. I look forward to hearing updates and continue uplifting you on social media. Um, Feel free to continue just being badass human beings because that's what it takes. And Texas is depending on you to be the voice, to be the change, and together we can all do it. So, with that being said, thank you both so much for coming on the podcast. I greatly appreciate both of you.
Thank
thank
you
you.
so much
Wait,
for. Oh,
yeah.
sorry. Go ahead, Lane.
No, you're good. I was just gonna say we'll email you links to our social media stuff.
Okay,
And
perfect. I'll
most
I'll
of
edit
it,
I'll edit this last part out. Don't worry, we're good.
Okay, thank you so much.
yeah. And most of our social media, it's just literally our names. I mean, mine's pretty easy. Like I said, my name is made up, so you just type in Florisbel and I'm probably the only one that's going to show up.
How shocked would you be if there was actually somebody else that had the name?
I've typed it with some hope and there's never anybody else. There's
Nobody
different
else.
variations, but not Florisbel.
It's unique.
Yeah, definitely.
Lane, yours is too easy to find, so I'll be sure to find it. So we're all good to go on that.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you both so much. Feel
Thank
free to
you.
hop off now and get some rest and hit the ground running tomorrow. Have a good night, guys.
Thank
Awesome. Thanks,
you.
Steph.
You do as
Bye.
well. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.